grief. We're all going to experience it at some point in our lives. And just before Thanksgiving, my father passed away. So I wanted to do this show today to talk about grief through the holidays, how to navigate it, and how I plan to navigate the holidays after the passing of my father. So if you know someone who's grieving through the holidays, share this with them and stick around. Turnover. It's incredibly expensive for any organization, but especially those that are small and mid-size. If you're an organization and you're hiring, it's so important to get it right. You need to identify the right people for the right roles. Here at Audacious Concepts, Inc., we help you perfect your hiring process so you get it right every single time. Reach out to us at audaciousconceptsinc.com. Welcome to Unleash Your Audacious Confidence on Win-Win Women TV. This show is all about sharing the tips, tools, and techniques that will allow you to step boldly in the direction of your dreams despite your feelings, fears, or past failures, to imagine what's possible for yourself and live the life you deserve. Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence here on Win-Win Women TV. I'm your host, Alicia Couri, and I first want to just say that today's show, if you have lost a loved one, if you're going through grief this season, my heart goes out to you, my prayers go out to you, and I just want you to know that the content I'm going to share today is not in an effort to diminish or change how you're grieving, but to really give you a different perspective on grief. So welcome to Win-Win Women TV. Like I said, I'm your host, Alicia Couri, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about navigating the holidays through grief. If you've never gone to winwinwomen.com, I invite you to go to winwinwomen.com and check out the content there. There are a multitude of show hosts. It's one of the largest platforms for women by women globally. So go check out some of the shows, and I hope you come back here to Unleash Your Audacious Confidence. We're here every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific. All right, so I'm still trying to navigate my own accent, apparently, because I spent a few weeks in Trinidad, so some of it might pop out every now and then at you. But yeah, so it hasn't even been a month yet. I lost my father a few weeks ago, just a few days before Thanksgiving. We had the funeral, and so I just wanted to share my perspective on loss and grief. And I know that some people have different perspectives, and especially, loss and grief are also tied into how you lost someone. Because I was talking earlier to my cousin who she's also lost both of her parents, and she lost a daughter who was tragically killed by the hands of someone else. She was murdered by someone else. And so, there are different ways that can impact you when you lose someone. And my father, he was suffering. He was in a lot of pain for a long, when you're in pain, any time is a long time. And so there was a sense of he's out of pain now because he was in tremendous pain. So that had a little to do with the reaction versus when you lose someone suddenly and it's unexpected. So I understand that, and I'm kind of framing this in that way because how we how we respond to those things could be different. So I just wanted to share again some perspectives and some tips that I'm going to be utilizing and I'm going to be leaning into, that hopefully it might be able to help some of you if you are experiencing loss or grief at this time of the year. Last year I did a show on When the Holidays Suck. You can check that out. It's here on When Women TV too. And I talked a little bit about grief. And I was talking about it from an intellectual perspective, right? Because I had never gone through that before personally. I'd seen people go through it. So I was talking about it from a different place in my life. And now I'm sitting here and going through the holidays, having lost my dad. So some of the same things that I shared, I'm going to share some of that too, because what I discovered through this process is what you believe, what you truly, truly believe, you live. And even though the things that I shared a year ago, almost to the Monday, I shared a year ago, they still stand true for me, because now that I have the experience, I'm walking the same walk. How we grow up believing about loss and grief, how we see it modeled to us as children, is how we kind of believe it should be. So if you came from a family where grief was everlasting and it was expressed in really emotional tones and a lot of either depression or crying or screaming or even anger, you'll model that as you grow up. Like that will impress upon you in your subconscious mind, and you'll continue to model that. Well, I can't say that I as a child experienced a lot of loss as we were growing up, so I didn't have really anything significant to model after. So I got to choose. Isn't that interesting? I got to choose how I wanted to experience this. And I got to choose how I wanted to experience this based on my own faith. Now, we all have different beliefs, but my faith as a Christian, I believe in heaven. I believe in the transmutation of energy. I believe that we go from one state to another state, that there is no real death. The body, the shell of us, yes, it will, everyone, everyone will leave this body at some point in their lives. And being able to kind of make the distinction of that when we leave this physical shell, we don't cease to exist. We continue to exist, and energy keeps flowing. And my energy will continue to flow, even though my physical body isn't here. So that's what in the core of me that I believe. I believe that my father has translated from one form into another, and that form that he's translated into will hold his personality, his memories, his spirit, his life, his energy, and that he continues to live on. And yes, I will miss him in the physical form, but I can still speak to him. In fact, I have found that now that he is no longer confined and by a human body, that I can speak to him freely, and I can not in a woo-woo crazy kind of way, but because I've had experience with him throughout my life, I can hear his voice tell me what he thinks about what I think and what I'm asking him and what I'm saying. And I can hear it in his voice and in his tone. So he's never really left me. And if we can take a moment to really recognize that energy doesn't die, energy continues to flow, then we can have some peace and some solace in the fact that they haven't left completely. They're not they haven't abandoned us. They are still here in some form. And when I look at myself, my brother, my sister, I even look at my children, I see my father's legacy through all of us. And I get to recognize that. So the first tip I wanted to share is gratitude, is really gratitude, because upon getting the news of his passing, that was the first thing that I leaned into. The first thing was gratitude. And I began to think of all the things that I could be grateful for his life and for his legacy and for his passing. Because, like I said, he was in a tremendous amount of pain every day. He even called me and, was telling me how much pain he was in. He was living in a different country than I. I'm originally from Trinidad. And so I couldn't physically be there with him. My sister was his caretaker, and so I would hear about everything that was going on. And from time to time, I got to speak with him. And his birthday was in October, so we got to video chat with him in October, and he was pretty much bedridden by then. But I started to think about all the things that I was grateful for, all the things that I could find gratitude in. And one of the biggest things that I continue to be grateful for is the love of friends and family members, but especially those friends that called me and texted me and messaged me and responded to my Facebook posts and my Instagram posts and on LinkedIn, and just shared their love and their support for me. That meant the world to me, because those relationships and those friendships and even strangers who could empathize and say, please accept my condolences. I'm so sorry for your loss. When you say something like that, it's in a time like this, you don't really know what to say to people. First of all, I don't know what to say to anybody. But the fact that you took the time to recognize and share your sympathy is enough. It is enough. It's something, because at a time like this, people can feel very lonely and very isolated. And to know that there are other people who care enough about you to let you know that they care. So that was really important. And then those who responded to our plea and my plea to help me get my children to buy the airline tickets, because again, it was over Thanksgiving and everything, all airline tickets like tripled. And when something like that happens, you don't necessarily have the resources just sitting there waiting for that. So just those who were generous and kind enough to share even $10, $5 toward helping me buy those airline tickets, because my oldest daughter lives in Minnesota and she was also handling some health issues. So to get her from Minnesota to Miami to Trinidad and back, was quite a task. And then my other two children and myself to go down and come back up. And so I was just eternally grateful. So that was something that I could really, really lean my gratitude into, that people cared enough to support that. I looked at my siblings. I was so grateful that I was not alone, that I had a brother and a sister, and my sister had such a heavy lift these last few years, because our mother is also in the stages of Alzheimer's, and she cares for both of them. And she still has to run her business, and she still has to run her life and her household, and she has two children and a husband and everything else. And I was just so grateful for her stepping up and being that caregiver. And the other thing I was grateful for is that she no longer had the burden of both our parents, that she can now breathe a little bit more. I mean, it might seem strange to say that, but I was grateful for that. I was grateful for the fact that I hadn't seen my oldest daughter in 2.5 years since she moved to Minnesota. And this brought all of us back together again over the Thanksgiving week. And so, There were so many things that I could find to be grateful for. Great. I mean, from the bottom of my being, from the core of my being to be grateful for. And that helped me walk through this with grace and with ease. There were frustrating times, of course. Planning a funeral is not easy, especially my father did not leave a will. We did not have access to his accounts. We had to kind of scramble and get everything together, but we had each other and we could support one another through it. So gratitude, watching our attitudes and not getting snippy with each other. We were like going through the flow together. If someone wanted something different, it's like, okay, go ahead. But we came together and we were, and I think it's because of that gratitude that we could love each other through that process and support one another through the process. Even at the funeral, my brother was saying all three of us could give the eulogy. We could each do part of the eulogy. And my sister didn't want to speak. And we're like, we got you. Don't worry about it. Just stand there and we'll handle it. So, that was something that I was immensely grateful for. I'm looking at my notes over here. So if you see me look over here, it's just, I don't want to run over. I have notes. So there were a lot of blessings. So if you can focus your mind on the things to be grateful for, that can help you walk through this process. The other thing that I want to share through this time, I saw a post by a friend of mine who was talking about Thanksgiving without her mom and how difficult it was as they were cooking her recipes, and not having her there was so difficult. And I thought about that, and I thought about flipping that. So this is the second tip. How do you keep their memory alive, but in a positive way, in a way that uplifts you instead of drags you down? And so the second tip I have is, as I was reading her post about her mom, I thought, well, why not bring, like I said at the beginning, her energy is here. Why not bring her energy into the room? Her energy is in every recipe that she had. Her energy is in the memories of you guys cooking this meal together. Why not focus on those positive things? Because what we focus on expands, right? That's a law of the universe. If you focus on something, it's going to grow and it's going to expand. So why not focus on the joy that you had when you prepared those meals together? And maybe you didn't cook it as good as she did. Maybe you didn't make it as well as she did. But the fact that you're bringing her recipes, you're bringing those traditions, you're bringing her into the experience is valuable. And so it's just a matter of looking at the perspective a little bit differently of how you see them not physically being there, but they could be there in spirit. And I wasn't planning to talk about this, but this is just a little aside for 2 seconds. Before my last son was born, we had believed for him. I was believing for a son. And it was 4 years that I was believing for him. And I had his name, and I made him very real to the rest of the family. In fact, my daughter, my youngest at the time, she was 3 years old when she started referring to him in the present. She would talk about him being with us. And so people thought she had a younger brother. That's how powerful it was to her, the way I spoke about him. And so I just want to take a snippet of that and bring it into this, because energy doesn't die. It just translates. So why not bring their energy, bring their life force, bring the joy that you had in those moments during the holidays, during those times, during the our wake and the funeral, and even after the funeral, my brother and sister and I would joke about our dad and you know how he used to dance, and we were each trying to dance like him and telling each other, you know, like, no, it's not like this, it's like this, because he had a very particular dance. And so, you know, we found joy. We found moments of joy, those pockets of joy that we could lean into and remember and have a laugh and have love through that process. The third tip I want to talk about is how do we transform despair into hope? And there's a book called The Gap and the Gain. And so in The Gap and the Gain, they talk about if we're always looking back at the things that we didn't accomplish, the things that we didn't do, or the things that we missed, we're constantly in the gap. We're constantly going to feel that despair. Now, in the gain, you start looking at, but what did I accomplish? What did we do? And you start measuring where you were to where you are now in the gain. So instead of looking at the gap, we look at the gain. And so that's a way that we can kind of translate despair into hope, because life goes on for the rest of us. Life continues to move forward, even in your grief. Life everywhere around you, life continues to move forward. And it's your choice whether or not you are going to remain in that place of death and despair, or if you are going to allow life to continue to move forward. My brother said the night of the wake, before the day before the funeral, he said, you know, I was here at the house at 3 a.m. when he passed, and here until 5 when the coroner came and took the body and everything. And I had a meeting at 6 a.m. that I had to go to. I had to go home, get dressed, hop on Zoom for a meeting. Life continued to go on for me. And that's all of us. Life continues to move on. Sometimes we sit in there and say, don't they realize what happened to me? Don't they realize how much pain I'm in? Everybody's continuing to live their life, because life continues to go on. And it's up to us whether or not we want to be in the grave, or if we want to honor that person's life with our lives. And that's what I chose. It was a very conscious choice. When we did at the funeral, at the eulogy, I talked about praise, and I talked about the gift of praise, and that praise is the language of heaven. And so if in those moments that we feel despair and we don't want to do it, if we make the conscious effort to praise and to praise and to praise and to give thanks, back to gratitude, and just to pray, let praise come out of us, then grief can melt away in praise. And so, but that has to be a conscious decision. That has to be a conscious effort. That has to be a conscious choice to do that. And so I chose to praise. I chose to lift my voice. I'm not that great of a singer, but I chose to lift my voice and praise God for the life and the impact that my father had. He had such tremendous impact in the lives of so many people. In fact, 2 months, I learned this, 2 months before he passed away, he graduated. He was still mentoring his students, and he graduated a PhD student 2 months before his death. That's something to praise. That's something to have tremendous joy and for me to feel, because he impacted this young man's life in such a profound way. He got his PhD because my father continued to mentor him even on his sickbed. He continued to edit his thesis for him and counsel him and reach out to him. So when I think about the type of person that my father was and how much of a giver he was, I can take a lot of comfort in that because his legacy will go on. He impacted so many people's lives in a very profound way. Now, those are some of the tips that I have. But if you find yourself in despair over this holiday season, find someone to talk to. Reach out to someone. Do not stay silent. There are hotlines that you can call. There are grief counselors that you can reach out to. There are people that love you. Like I said earlier, people love and support me. I got so many text messages of, if you just need to call, if you just need to talk, call me. If you just want to cry on the phone, call me, I'll listen. Make a human connection. Stay connected to somebody, because that's the person that can help pull you out of that despair if you're feeling it. So don't be ashamed. Don't be prideful. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Get counseling. There are grief counselors. You can just look them up online, look up reviews, find someone to support you in this moment. Don't stay silent. And um, I'm just really, really, I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful for my family. I know there are some people that don't have family members, or they're in war with their family, and they don't feel like they have that support. Sometimes friends are closer than family members. Sometimes you need to make a friend. You might need to make a new friend. But there's social media that you can connect with someone. You can connect with other people. And just don't spend it alone. Don't spend this time alone grieving, because I'll tell you, what you focus on expands. I'll say that again, because if you focus on the grief, if you focus on the despair, if you focus on the pain, it will continue to grow inside of you. And that's a sure ticket for more devastation in your life, in your health. So don't do that. Don't lean into that. Lean into gratitude, lean into praise, lean into community. Find a community, find a church, go to church, find someone that can help support you in this. Anyway, that's all I had to share. And again, I just want to say such a heartfelt thank you, thank you, thank you to all those who were so generous with us, with me, with my children. It meant the absolute world to have them with me during that time. Thank you for the hearts. And especially having them there to hear the eulogies, to spend time with his longtime friends, to hear about the good things that he did and who he was as a person and all the wonderful things, for them to get to hear about their grandfather in a way that they never have before. That was so important. And they're older now. So, my oldest is 27 and then 22 and 16. So they could really appreciate hearing those stories. If they were young kids, they may not have appreciated it that much. It would have just gone over their heads. But being at an age where they can sit and listen and talk to my dad's siblings. My father was one of 12 siblings. Yeah, he had 11 siblings. And so being able to hear some of those stories was really, really pivotal. And the last thing I'll share is, if you have an elderly parent, one of the things I did a year ago was I turned on my phone and I started asking my dad all kinds of goofy questions. I was just asking him about his life and the things that he did and the things he enjoyed and the things he loved, and about us as children and all those things. And I got to edit that video and play it during his wake. and also send it to his siblings as kind of a memento of him in his own words. So we have that video that I can always turn on when I want to hear him and see him. And that's the power now of having so much access to video. Like, videotape your life. Leave a legacy of pictures and videos for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren to know who you are. That's super important. And with that, I am going to now talk with my studio audience, but I'll say goodbye to those of you who are watching on video. So be bold, be brave, and always do one thing every day to step out with audacious confidence. Until the next episode, I will see you on another episode of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence here on Win Win Women TV.